Hello, hello, and we are live on LinkedIn, and I am so excited. This is a topic actually that I've been wanting to talk about for a long time, and not because it's exciting. People know, I'm Kelly Hernandez, the nonprofit marketing nerd, and usually I like to talk about like fun, shiny objects, right? AI, marketing, social media, video, influencer marketing, that's where I'm at in the nonprofit space. But, something that is, I would say, not more important, but equally important. um, that keeps coming up for many of our clients as donor security. And, the world of donor data is changing, and I don't have all the answers. And many of our clients had these questions. So I went ahead and brought it, but many of you probably recognize this face. I did ask Jena Lynch, who is the Education and Community Engagement Manager at Donorbox, to join. So I know Donorbox has so much wealth of knowledge and is really focused on donor security as they're growing as a donor processing system and even building out their CRM and AI tools that are embedded within their tech. But they've been on the forefront of ensuring that happens in their technology. But with that, I know Jena has a lot of knowledge that will really help us no matter where we're at, no matter what donation processing platform we're using. So thank you so much for joining, Jena.
Thanks for having me, as always. It's always a joy. No matter what topic we're talking about, it's always fun.
Yes. Like, exactly. And this is so important. And I know for so many nonprofits, and someone even said, like, well, this doesn't apply to me. Like, I'm a small nonprofit. It doesn't apply to me. But fraud doesn't care about size. What does the real risk look like for nonprofits today?
Yes, you know what? You would be surprised to hear that. I also get that a lot. Like, we are just a small nonprofit. No one's going to come after us,
Right.
right? And honestly, that is one of the biggest myths out there. And like you said, size does not matter. That is the absolute truth. In fact, 90%, whoa, 50% of nonprofits are more likely to be targeted than other types of organizations. And the reason for that is because they run lean, right? These
Yeah.
are often small teams, and they are focused on mission and impact and not so much on cybersecurity. That's just the way it is. And that means fewer internal controls. That means less staff training because you're training on other things, right? You've got your boots on the ground, you're working on programs and delivering them to your community. And often that can mean that you're using older or just tools that don't come with strong protections, right? So the truth is, yeah, it can really happen to any organization. And 10% of global fraud actually involve nonprofits. That's global fraud. That's a
Wow.
massive
Yes.
percentage if you think about it. And nearly 1 in 4 organizations have already faced some sort of cyber attack. And when you put that number to that, right, the threat is very real. And I know this feels like a lot of doom and gloom, and I swear this is going to feel more uplifting as we continue to talk about it and more empowering. But so the risk is too. We are living in this amazing age of technology, right? We are seeing fraud that is both old, tried and true, and new. And we can talk more about these types later. There's like card testing, and then there's grant fraud. There's, of course, internal stuff, which is never fun to talk about, but embezzlement and misappropriation. And now there's even AI scams, right? And I'll share more about that later. But this world is evolving, and it's becoming easier to trick folks and confuse folks and get for scammers to get what they need. So when nonprofits tell me we're too small for people to want to target us, right? Or we'll deal with it when it happens, or we're fine because we're using this one platform and we've never had a problem.
Mhm.
Those are the types of misconceptions, I
Yeah.
guess, that put your organization at risk. And um, the good news is, I said there was going to be uplifting here. The
Sure.
good news is, right, once you face that reality, you can start putting protections in place. It does not have to be overwhelming. I know security is not a fun, cool topic, but it's important, and it really needs to be intentional. So
Mhm.
it applies to all of us. It really does.
Yeah. And, I will say, I've heard from two of our clients that they were, I don't know, victims or whatever, but they were targeted and had security breaches, had dollars, had yeah. So like, this is a real thing. And I can vouch for this. This is why I brought in Jena. Is I'm like, well, I don't know anything about this other than it's important. One of
It's
the things that I want to mention, and that hopefully we'll talk about a little later, is one thing that I've heard nonprofits say that does overlap with my expertise is, oh yeah, for segmentation of donors, we can just upload the donor information into ChatGPT. And I'm like, no, don't do that. So
yes.
I'm curious, and I won't put you on the spot now, but hopefully we can chat if we have time a little later about the AI scams.
Oh, I have some big feelings about this. So
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
please.
Okay. So, you know, I just talked about our clients where it was dollars, like that was the impact, and
Mhm.
that's what they saw. But then it not only changes process, but I know the damage of a fraud or just a breach of information has other consequences.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I can think of like staff morale, the person that made it happen, right? Donor trust, or reputation overall. But like, what are the real consequences other than money if a nonprofit is a victim of fraud?
Yeah, money is just one piece of it. Of course, that sucks. You don't want to lose your donors' dollars. You don't want to lose your organization's dollars. But from what I've seen, what really sticks after a breach, falling prey to a scam or fraudsters or whatever, it really is like this ripple effect, right? Like you said, think about your donors, right? They don't just give because they believe in your mission. Well, yes, that's number one. They also trust that their dollars are going to be safe. They trust that their information is going to be safe. And when that trust is broken, because if something happens, you have to let your donors know, right? That transparency and communication is number one. And so when that happens, when that trust is broken, it's not something you can repair overnight, right? Not just technically, but the relationship. I mean, the reality is if donor data is leaked or misused in some way, you talked about ChatGPT, and we'll dive into more of that later, I hope. But it can really set an organization back quite a bit. And even if you patch that immediate problem, right? Um, like you said, it's that damage to credibility and it's much slower to heal. If I were to give to an organization, whether it was $50 or $500, and my information got leaked or something happened where my money was not in a safe place or my credit card information made it into the hands of somebody else, I wouldn't give to that organization again, even if they fixed the problem, right? That's the reality. So that's the reputation part too, right? That is a big one. You can spend years building your standing with your community, right? And
Yeah,
it takes time to get people to know you and trust you. And one little incident, like it can overshadow that work, like I said. And I've heard situations where funders or partners really do start to pull back because they don't want to be tied to an organization that's seen as unsafe, even if the mission and the heart is amazing, right? Um, and
yeah,
then so that ripples into how your staff is feeling. Like, oh, okay, we're putting in all this good work. We feel like we did everything right. This
mhm,
thing happened, and now it feels cruddy, right? I mean, nonprofits usually run on lean teams, and you already wear a bajillion hats. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, right? And when something like this happens, when fraud hits, those same people on your staff suddenly have to drop everything to deal with it, right? Whether that's dealing with lawyers or just IT or refund requests or unhappy phone calls or emails from your donors. It can be heavy, right? It can be stressful. And that's also an environment where people can like burn out
right.
quickly. So yeah, I mean to circle back, I think dollar amount is serious. Yeah.
Mhm.
Honestly, though, the bigger cost that hits is that trust piece, right? And that can take a while to recover from.
Yeah. So I know and I see some people chiming in. So if you are, we'd love to know where you're joining from. Feel free to drop in the comments. If you have questions, we're gonna feel free to drop them in the comments, and if we have time with Jena at the end. Thank you, Donorbox, again for giving us 45 minutes of Jena's time.
Yeah.
But if you have questions at the end, again, for people that are just chiming in, I see a few more people have hopped on. I am here with Jena Lynch, who is the Education and Community Engagement Manager. I think that's your title at Donorbox, something like that. And we're talking about donor security. And we just went through, I don't want to say the doom and gloom, but the reality.
The reality.
The reality. But I will say, like, let's talk about red flags as hope. What are the red flags nonprofit teams should be watching for? What can we look for now? That might be signals of fraud or suspicious activity.
Yeah, this is not something that is often taught. Any organization that I've worked for, I've never done training or been taught how to watch out for something. And fraud doesn't come with this like big neon sign that says "watch out," right? Like it can really not be so obvious. It really creeps through with small patterns at first, and so it's really important for your team to know what to look out for so that you can catch it before it becomes a crisis. And one big one is donation activity. I hinted to this a little earlier. If you start seeing a run of very small gifts, $1, $2, $3, $5, popping up quite a bit, that's often credit card testing, right? So that's when scammers are using your donation form to test stolen credit cards. And even if one goes through, you could be facing disputes, chargeback fees, and then even your payment processor, whatever you're using, can suddenly flag your account as high risk. And then you won't be able to take in any legitimate donations either, right? So if you're seeing these odd donation amounts, unless you have a campaign that's, $2 for whatever, which, that can be quite common, and what to look out for if you have special campaigns that are low dollar amounts. But otherwise, that could be considered pretty suspicious, right? In that same way, other red flags could be mismatched donor information. So if an address doesn't match the credit card state, or several donations coming from one IP address, right? Because typically a donor will give once, hopefully it's a big once, and not a whole bunch coming from the same IP. And that's something that you can identify. And another too is a spike in refund requests. I don't know about you. I have not seen a lot of refund requests from my donors before, right? They give and they're happy about it. And there is very little buyer's remorse when it comes to giving to a good cause, right? So if you see refund requests coming in, impersonating a donor or whatever that may be, that is also quite a big warning sign. And before you follow that through, you should, dig into that a little bit more. And this is a side I talk less about, but it's something to put on your radar. And by the way, we're working on a security series on our YouTube channel that we're going to start rolling out here in the next month. So we'll dive into more of these even deeper. But there's also the internal side. This is less fun to talk about. But if you notice odd edits to your accounting records, right? Or if a staff member suddenly starts living far beyond their salary. We're nonprofit workers, our salaries are pretty humble typically. That could be embezzlement or fund misappropriation. And those kinds of fraud are subtle. And they can look pretty invisible until suddenly they're very visible, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? So those are some of the biggest ones I've heard of, some of the things that we've talked a lot about at Donorbox as far as education goes. And it really is just, if you can recognize these little patterns, it's not, like I said, it's not this big flashing neon sign. It really is very subtle. Just knowing what to look for, that means that your staff becomes your frontline protection, right? These are just simple defenses that you can put into place.
They're tiny red flags. I see all these little tiny red flags.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Okay. And then, one of the reasons that inspired me, I think, to originally have this conversation is I think I was presenting at a conference, And someone was very proud that they had done donor segmentation by uploading their donor data spreadsheet sheet into ChatGPT
Yeah.
so it could help them segment their donors. I was like, no, stop, like almost in the middle of that, like, no. And now proactively, I think anytime I talk about AI, I emphasize this is not a way we should be using it. Why is that a bad idea?
Kelly. It makes me cringe a little. And I always come to these spaces saying this is a judgment-free zone. I am not judging anyone here. I am still learning a lot about AI myself and how to use it. This is something that might feel like a shortcut, but you are uploading very sensitive donor information into a I repeat, public AI tool. And that is such a risky move. And your donors did not consent to that, right? And once that data leaves your system, you can't control what happens to it, right? You don't know if it's stored or logged or used to train their models. And from a donor's perspective, that is just a huge breach of trust. It really is, right? People gave you their information believing you'd protect it, and not just hand it off to a third party tool, right? And on top of that, depending on where you operate as well, it could even put you out of compliance with privacy regulations, right? And they're all different in all different countries. And I get it. I can understand the temptation. I love AI for all sorts of shortcuts. And this does not mean that AI has no place in your nonprofit work. In fact, I mean, it's an incredible helper when it's used in the right way, right? It's fantastic for drafting appeals and putting your own spin on it, brainstorming campaign ideas, writing social media captions, even mapping out a content calendar. A million and one ways you can use it. And all of those use cases can make your team's life easier without ever touching sensitive donor data, right? Find other ways to use it to save your time so you can spend time on segmenting. But part of this too is you don't have to avoid AI altogether when it comes to segmentation and donor insights. And that's exactly too why Donorbox built JAI, which is our AI assistant. It's the cutest little blue bird that you'll see when you log into Donorbox. And instead of sending your donor list out into a public tool, JAI works inside of your secure Donorbox environment where your data already lives, right? Where your donors already live. And this is going to sound like a bunch of jargon, but Donorbox is SOC 2 Type 1 and 2 certified, which is really important, PCI and DSS compliant, right? HIPAA compliant for medical data, and we use tokenization and encryption. Very fancy, techie ways of just saying we protect every single bit of your data in Donorbox in every single transaction, right? It just means that your data never leaves the platform. It's analyzed and segmented safely, right? With the same protections that guard every single donation. So AI can absolutely be your assistant. It should never be your donor database. Should never be your donor database. So if you want to use AI to segment your lists and engage your donors and analyze your donor data, tools like JAI really give you that power without ever putting your donors at risk. So I really encourage folks that are doing that to explore tools that are already built into the environments that they're using, so that they can do it safely.
Yeah. And I think if there are people joining that are they're hearing about JAI and they're like, well, we use this other platform and there's no AI on the back end. I'd love to hear it because I know different platforms are developing at different timelines.
Mhm.
But I will encourage, it's one of the things I love about Donorbox. As an AI nerd myself, and as someone that really, really like private information, public information, right? Your donor activity is private, owned by you, right? Owned by your
Yes.
organization, not for the world to see through ChatGPT.
Mhm.
That JAI, I'm a huge fan of it. I've seen it kind of from an idea to development. I
Yes.
will love to see how you continue. But if you have a tool that does not have that, please send me a comment, send me a message, drop a comment. We'd love to hear if you're using a different tool that's not Donorbox.
Yep.
Jenna's here to educate. We'd love to hear you talk about that as well. But the importance is, I will tell you that having that, do not get tempted by ChatGPT. Use your internal systems.
Especially
Okay.
imagine for your major donors, right? Your biggest philanthropists that maybe have millions and millions of dollars. Now they're public info that likely they've kept very safe off of online databases. It's just out there, and now they can be found and targeted as well, right? So just something to keep in mind.
Okay, well, let's, I hate to say, you said you were like, we're not doom and gloom. We've had some hope. We now see some solutions, but let's go ahead and play worst case scenario if that's
Okay.
okay, Jenna.
All right.
I have no idea what to like. I think for me, if I were an executive director of a small nonprofit, again, if I went back there, I would have no idea. I'd be talking to ChatGPT about what I should be doing next if I got hacked. But I know you probably have better solutions than the randomness that ChatGPT might give me.
Yeah.
So let's say I'm an executive director. I get hacked tomorrow. What should I be doing? And maybe like what first 3 calls should I be making?
Yeah. It's funny. I used ChatGPT the other night to say, if I win the $1 billion Powerball, what are the first 3 things I should do? And you know what? It was pretty good advice there. So, you know what? In this scenario, let's not use ChatGPT, although it can be quite good for other ones. Yeah, I
I'll
know
add
I
that.
promised not doom and gloom, and I know this is a scary thought, and, more than likely, if you're here, it means that you're already interested and it's already on your radar, and that is amazing, and this should be a first step and really continuing to keep your organization safe. That being said, if you were hacked tomorrow, if you were fraudster tomorrow, if you were scammed tomorrow, um, the most important thing is to act quickly and not ignore it, right? You want to be prepared and not have to scramble as it's happening to figure out what to do. Speed absolutely matters in containing the damage, right? So the first call you should make would be to your bank or your payment processor. So that's Stripe, PayPal, or whoever processes your donations. They need to know immediately so that they can help stop fraudulent transactions, freeze suspicious activity, and start protecting your funds and your donors' funds. And we've seen that what happens when card testing, those couple dollars here or there, or fraud isn't caught fast, disputes pile up, right? Processors, again, they flag your account as a dangerous account, and then suddenly those real donations are blocked. So not only do you have all this fraudulent activity, now you can't get the real donations. So you have that contact information on hand, right? In case of emergency, here it is, so that you can contact those folks. And then the second call should be to, if you have it, your internal IT or your security partner, whether that's a staff person, a consultant, or your fundraising platforms support team. So at Donorbox, for example, we have an entire security team and we provide 24/7 protection and monitoring, right? So our customers can reach us right away if they suspect malicious activity, and we're also monitoring for that. So more than likely, we'll contact you before you contact us. But whoever that person on your team is, they'll help identify what's been accessed, right? Secure your systems, and then prevent further intrusion, I guess, right? And then finally, your third call should be to, if it gets to this point, but your legal counsel, right, or your board leadership. So depending on what your setup is here, because breaches come not just with the technical issues, the technical fallout, but also, again, in the legal and reputational consequences. So if it's an entire database leak, that's when you would call them, right? You'll need guidance and notification. on notification requirements, in many cases, organizations, depending on where you're located, are required to disclose breaches to their donors. And then, that's pretty much it. Just working quickly, knowing that it's just 3 steps. That's it, right? Hopefully you don't get to that third one. But the more you plan this out ahead of time, the less chaotic it feels if this were to ever happen.
Yeah. I love the recommend, like there should be in the policy or procedure manual or in your business office's SOPs of like, this is what, if this, then this, right?
Yes.
And I think, Jena, you were so helpful of these are the steps in the order and why. And, you said a little bit, this is important. It has to have, like, I will emphasize what Jena's not saying, like, this needs to be all hands on deck, drop everything, because a breach, if it then, right, snowballs, could have long-standing effects for your organization.
Yeah.
So just 3 calls, but those 3 calls need to happen ASAP, all hands on deck. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the first steps. So, we partner at Nonprofit Marketing Nerds with a lot of very small to mid-sized nonprofits. We partner with a women's shelter that has an operating budget less than $1 million. We also partner with a disability service provider that has tons of money coming from different places, but there's no centralized business office, right, to monitor things. And I would say their tech's kind of old. Sorry to out them if they're watching. And I know a lot of nonprofits, right, are bootstrapping things or using free tools. Tell me a little bit, because we want to be efficient and effective and good stewards of money. Where's that line with being scrappy and then actually putting the mission of organization at risk?
This is such a good question. I have only worked at scrappy nonprofits, so this speaks to me deeply. And this is something I hear a lot too, because nonprofits are probably the best out of any type of business or organization that's stretching their resources, because they have to, right? Being scrappy is usually a strength. I am so proud of all the scrappy nonprofits we work with and that I've worked for. It's what keeps programs going and dollars focused on impact. But when it comes to this kind of thing, when it comes to donor data, when it comes to fundraising tools, scrappy can quickly turn into risky. You kind of get what you pay for. And the reality is, old tech. I can't even think of examples right now because it's old, right? Or these free platforms that people are often seeing and tempted by don't often come with the security safeguards that you need. We know that only about half of nonprofit staff ever receive fraud awareness training, and more than half of organizations don't even use basic protections like multi-factor authentication, right? That's when you click login on your computer and then you go and you click it on your phone. And while yes, it can be a pain in the butt, it's so important to keeping everything safe. And then you add in tools that don't include things like encryption, so that if when your data is accessed, it's encrypted, you can actually see what it says, or fraud monitoring, right? And suddenly your mission is exposed in all sorts of not fun ways. So that's where the line is. It is so good and fine to be scrappy with things like event decor, how you promote a campaign, all those things. But when it comes to handling probably some of your most important data, which is your donor information and your payment processing, cutting corners is not something I would recommend. So, that's something at Donorbox we really value, right? The good news is, like, choosing Donorbox, for example, doesn't mean taking on another big investment or an extra layer of cost. I keep on saying like free plans. So those are the ones that are like, won't cost you a single dollar, right? We have all levels of plans, right? The standard, you sign up for free, you do your thing, and then we grow with you from there. But security is built in to the platform from day one on every single plan, right? Every donation form is encrypted. Donor data is tokenized so that card numbers are never, ever, ever stored. We don't keep that information. We've got fraud detection tools like Stripe Radar and reCAPTCHA and Cloudflare, monitoring transactions 24/7. And it's just part of the package, right? It's not something you have to bolt on later or pay extra for. So I would say just, be scrappy where it makes sense, but don't compromise on the systems that protect your supporters, just because you don't want to pay a few extra bucks.
Yeah. And I will tell you, this is not a promo for Donorbox, but I'm going to double down on that. Because one of the things, people always like, oh, this free platform. And I don't want to say the name, but it starts with a Z. And I openly talk about it quite often. There are a lot of situations where these things that nonprofits are using and they're selling out of scrappiness, they're too good to be true because like there's always a catch on the back end.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons I love Donorbox is that there's so much transparency. I personally love it the most though for ease of use on the back end for setup and for the front end for donors. That's why I'm a huge fan of Donorbox. But just remember, if you are using one of those free plans right now and you're watching this, consider, again, not a promo, consider Donorbox and looking into it, or at least go double check. Do we have, how do they process? Where are they storing this donor information for my processing? Because typically there's a catch.
Yes, and typically there should be a dedicated landing page for that. Whatever platform you're using, look for it, right? yada.com /security. We've got a security page that tells you everything you need. And hopefully the platforms that you're using, whether that's fundraising or anything else, has a page for you. And if you're not sure, if it's not clear, email them, get those answers. This is not something that you don't want to know about.
And I know you and I both come from the fundraising background, right? So I'd love to talk a little bit about, why focusing on donor security can actually build more trust with donors. Because I think it's true, right? I'd love to, right? Isn't it?
Yeah, no. Oh gosh, yes. I think this is our bread and butter, right? Me and you. It's just like that donor trust. That's what we're all trying to do. We're just trying to get our donors to trust us more, believe in us more, stick with us longer. And so this is such an important part because security training your staff about it isn't just about preventing bad things from happening. I know it sounds like that, like, oh, we don't want these bad things to happen, but it really is about actively building donor confidence, right? We know that 70% of donors want to know where their funds are being used. That's just a fact. And more than half of fraud victims have had, they've given through insecure platforms. So almost all of your donors want to know where their dollars are going. And then half of fraud victims, it's because your platforms have not been secure, right? I think that tells us, donors are paying attention, right? They care about transparency. They care about safety. And so when you can clearly say, and put this in a way that's not jargony, so all of your donors can understand, if you can say, your information is, encrypted. We are XYZ compliant, right? PCI or whatever that may be.
All those letters
card,
I don't know.
Yeah. And all your card details are never stored on our servers. That's always one of my biggest questions as a donor. It's like, what are you doing with my card info, right? If you can say your card details are never stored, you're sending a message we take your info safely or, seriously. And, that's a big part of it. And it really can be as simple as that statement that just instills a sense of security and strong security. Actually, it really does strengthen relationships with your supporters. If a donor knows that they're giving through a platform that is safe and that their data is protected, they will give again. They will for sure give again, right? And they may even give more because they know that they're confident in their gift and that it won't backfire. So yeah, I will leave you with this. Security is not just an IT thing, right? This is not just something your IT team should be talking about. This is for sure a trust building
Yeah.
tool. And it just tells donors, like, we are good stewards, not only of your gift, but of your personal information. And
Uh-huh.
that's just good stuff. It's just good stuff, you know? It's simple as that.
I think so one of the things I know, let's go back to me in a previous life. Like,
Yeah.
right. So I'm like, okay, I heard this. Jenna says it's important. I
Mm.
need to focus on it. Maybe I'm using that platform that other platform that I'm not gonna say that I know doesn't protect donor security. But let's say, I don't really have capacity to overhaul. What are three things I can do maybe this quarter, right? We're walking to quarter four. What are things we can do right now to get more secure?
Yeah, it's funny we're talking about this as we're moving into Q4, which is a very busy season for nonprofits. I know that folks are already maybe worrying that they're going to be stretched thin in giving season, and that um, this type of thing can seem overwhelming. And I promise you, it doesn't have to be. You can really narrow it down, like you said, to just a few things to focus on in the next month or within your quarter, even, right? I would say number one thing is your staff. They are your champions here. You want to set up those internal controls. Even simple steps like splitting up duties, so the same person isn't both handling, you know, the money transactions or reconciling books can make a big difference. But also laying out, if this happens, this person will take care of it, or if this happens, this person will take care of it, or if this person's gone, this person will call those three people we talked about, and really laying it out, right? I think that's the first one, is just setting those expectations, letting your staff know this is important. You're creating a system. Those internal controls will be your number one best defense. And then following that, you want to train your staff, right, to recognize those little red flags that we talked about, right? Those patterns, those small card testing things, mismatched donor info, spike and refund requests. If your team knows that those are the warning signs, they can act quickly before it snowballs. So it does not have to be long and complicated. You do not have to set aside an entire day to train your staff, right? Just even a basic awareness session. Let's have some coffee and some snacks, and let's just talk about this really quickly and assign who will be looking for what, will really be helpful. And then I think at this point, third is just to make sure that your fundraising platform is secure. And if it's not, switch to one that is. I promise you, the time it takes to switch will be less time than it would take to have to clean up the mess from a breach, right? This is a big one because the right platform will do most of the heavy lifting for you. It really will, right? Again, Donorbox has everything in place so that our customers our nonprofits never have to worry about it. This is not something that costs them any time, right? So those are the three things, right? Set up your internal team and your controls, talk to your staff about awareness, and just see what platform you're on, see if they have a security page, make sure they're answering all the questions you may have. And if they're not, email them and ask as many questions as you feel like you need to, and hopefully they'll answer them, right?
Yeah. And one of the first steps might be, hey, go rewatch this live. Send
There
it
you
to
go.
send it to anyone that touches money at your organization and
Yep,
rewatch it
yep.
live. But you did just say, Jenna, that, and I see, thanks for sharing those tips. Incredibly useful, especially since nonprofit teams are running so lean at the moment. It's so
They are. Yeah,
true.
yeah.
Yes. And you mentioned before I hop in, I know I have a couple more questions. I only have 6 more minutes of your time. But will you talk a little bit more about, you said there's a training you guys are doing or a series? Because I think in terms of education, part of the overwhelm, right? like Christy just said, like part of the overwhelm is how lean everyone's running. And, I invited you in because I'm like, I don't know anything about this. And I was talking to some other member of your team and I'm like, this is very techy and I want someone to teach me where I understand it.
Yes.
So I appreciate the tech, and I know, Jena, you're often, I think, the translator between tech and small nonprofits. So thank you for being the translator. But can you tell us more about that series that you're launching a little bit more?
Yeah. Well, so if you don't follow Donorbox on YouTube already, you should definitely do that. Not only do we have webinars and short tips and tricks and inspirational spotlights in our podcasts and all of those fun, bright things, we also put out educational series. So one that we will be working on rolling out. I think I'm filming the first one in the next couple of weeks, and it's either a series of 3 or 4. Will be all about donor security. So we're really going to be diving deep and going through the layers. So it's not just about how Donorbox is protecting, our organizations and their donors, but just these best practices in general. So I guess that should have been my tip number 1. Go follow Donorbox on YouTube.
Tip 1.
Right. So we'll talk about how we're taking a layered approach to our security for sure, right? But that's a good place to start. And the team who writes these series, I mean, I can't talk enough good words about our content team, but again, we have a massive security team on Donorbox, and they inform all of these important conversations. So yeah.
Cool. And then in addition, you mentioned a few things, including having a massive team focused on security. And I know it's something that I've heard from, including from your CEO, about that's something he's very focused on. So it was wonderful for me to hear it top down, right? That like, this is what we're focused on in the next year. Along with developing, I think, super proactive, accessible AI integrations and continuing to upgrade Donorbox all the time. It's just constantly getting upgraded, always. But what else do you think Donorbox is doing maybe a little differently than other fundraising tools?
Yeah, I'll go back to saying we do this, what we call a layered approach, right? So it's not just certifications or one piece of technology. It's continuous monitoring. It's fraud detection powered by machine learning. It's DDoS protection, which is those cyber attacks, tokenization, encryption, all working together, right? And that combination really reduces gaps that often exist when nonprofits piece together these tools or outdated things. But beyond this tech, right, working 24/7, it really isn't just a technical feature that we're plugging. It truly is a part of our staff culture too. Every single Donorbox employee, every single one from all around the world, goes through cybersecurity training from day one. We run regular penetration tests. We even partner with Integrity. I don't know how to pronounce it. Integrity. I'll figure that out. But basically, what that is, it's a vulnerability disclosure program. So hackers can help us find, like, they're called ethical hackers, right? They're people who are using their hacking skills for good. And so they help us find and fix issues before they ever reach our customers. So they go in and they work with us and say, hey, if there's this thing, we were able to breach it, this is how we fix it. So I think for us, right, it's not just like a tool that you can use, but we take it seriously. And we are a partner in keeping your information safe, your donors' information safe. And again, it's not an extra cost either, right? It's just woven into every single campaign and every donation page by default, because it's so important.
And it's one of the things I love about Donorbox is, I talk about being good fiscal stewards, but it's wonderful to partner with a tech company that's also focused on being good fiscal stewards of your donor dollars as they're processing and managing them. So Jena, I just have like a minute more of your time, but very quickly, I just want to make sure that people know that, again, if you're watching this and you check out and it's not secure, right? Check out Donorbox as an alternative option. That's coming from me, not from Jena. And then if you are interested in some training about donor security, remember, if you don't have access to hiring in a trainer, there's a YouTube series coming back on the Donorbox YouTube channel that'll educate on that. Is there anything else you want to make sure people know about donor security in 2025?
You know what? If you're curious to dive more into how we're doing it at Donorbox, donorbox.org /security. It's all laid out there. You can request to access our documents and certifications as well. And yeah, if you ever have any questions, you can always reach out to us at support@donorbox.com. Our customer success team is amazing. We are 24/7 because we're all around the world. So you can get a response pretty quickly. I think I'll leave you with this. At the end of the day, protecting your donor's trust protects your mission, right? The security stuff, it does not have to be complicated. It really just has to be intentional. And because you're listening today, I think your mind's already there. So
yeah. And Jena, thank you again for your time. Thank you, thank you, thank you,
thank
and
you.
your knowledge. And yeah, I look forward to continuing to hopefully bring you on for important topics where you know much better than I do. So thank you again for your time.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.